joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. By any measure, Vermont is a small, rural state. The only state with fewer people is Wyoming. And according to the U.S. Census, Vermont is tied with Maine as the state with the highest percentage of rural residents at 61%. Vermont's three most rural counties are in the Northeast Kingdom, and those counties, Caledonia, Essex, and Orleans, are getting some significant funding to connect residents with affordable, high-speed internet. To learn more about that and a few other things, I'm joined with Sarah Waring. Sarah is the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Director of Rural Development for both New Hampshire and Vermont. It's so great to see you, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming in.
It's good to be here and to see the team. Yeah. Thank you.
So we're going to start with this recent news just announced by the Vermont Congressional Delegation, the USDA's first ever Reconnect grant. So tell us about that grant and what it's designed to do.
Yeah, terrific. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really happy to talk about this grant. So Reconnect covers costs for both construction and equipment to build out high-speed internet access. And what's really thrilling about this in particular is that in the Northeast Kingdom, they have accessed over $17 million of grant funding. The Northeast Kingdom Broadband CUD, right, which is Communications Union District, worked hard to get this money. It's a big application, federal application, and they had to be competitive across the country. And so bringing this funding in for over $17 million is going to help them build over 300 miles of fiber optics to 22 of their 56 municipalities up there.
Wow. I know that this all has been coming for a while, but this seems like a real boost. And what is this going to mean for families in the Northeast Kingdom?
Well, you know, I mean, we learned during the pandemic that internet was totally vital to our mental health, our physical safety, even just to order groceries online. And that's during a crisis, right? Telemedicine, distance learning, etc. But every day, day to day, families that don't have access to internet, their kids are having to do homework at the town hall or at the library late at night. Businesses that don't have access to internet can't change their hours and tell their audience or their customers about it. So this will be a fundamental shift for folks who have really been left out because of the cost of internet up until now. And what I'm excited about is that the Biden-Harris administration, our congressional delegation, leaders like Northeast Kingdom Broadband, and then state leaders have been pushing for this for a really long time, and this feels like the beginning of momentum now.
Right, of really the big kickstart. So what's the time frame? I mean, I know because this has been coming for such a long time, you probably have some coordination to do, a lot of papers to sign. I mean, what do you think?
And if I predicted, I would inevitably be wrong, right? So what I will say is that Northeast Kingdom Broadband and Rural Development still have some of that documentation to figure out. But what we hope is that this funding will be able to be used for this construction season going forward.
Wow, well, that's very exciting. Yeah. And then, just kind of stepping back a bit, why is the USDA Rural Development involved in affordable internet connectivity? I mean, you've just described it a little bit. It's become something we all must have now.
Yeah. You know, we think about it sort of as to be able to find a job, find a home, stay healthy, stay connected. Those are the things you need to do if you are living in a small rural town. And now, more than ever, all of those things are conducted online. So internet has become a basic service in the same way that electricity has been for a long time. But without those fundamental pieces of community, being able to get your education and connect with your teachers, having a good job and being able to communicate with your bosses or your customers, and then being able to stay safe and healthy, all of that information is traded either over email or online or on a website. And so it has become an essential service, really, truly, for everyone in a small rural town to have access to those critical pieces of infrastructure.
Right, and you're about making communities healthy and resilient, and that's a big piece of it. And I love that when you talk about health, that whole connection to doctors is huge now. Yeah. So high-speed broadband is not, of course, the only investment that the USDA Rural Development is helping with in rural Vermont. There's also a recent announcement of $11 billion, this is nationwide, for clean and reliable energy. And some of that money is coming here. How will that help out Vermont and our neighbors over in New Hampshire?
You know, this is, for me personally, Fran, this is super exciting. My dad was a solar installer in the 70s, right? So this feels like bringing it home to Vermont.
Yeah.
What I'll start by saying is that, you know, rural development's job is economic opportunity and quality of life for rural Americans. That's what we do every day in our work. This investment through the Inflation Reduction Act, and you're right, it's $11 billion nationwide, as much as I would love for most of that to come to Vermont and New Hampshire, we're gonna have to compete for it. The idea behind this money is that it's going to reduce costs and also reduce carbon emissions. Okay, so it's two things.
Win-win.
And it's really going to depend on who you are as an applicant, how you access these funds, but there are two programs in particular that I think Vermonters are really going to latch onto. One is called Rural Energy for America, REAP program. That's available to small businesses and farmers. And they can either do energy efficiency projects or renewable energy projects through a grant or a loan guarantee. The other one, the new one that's coming out this summer, is called Powering Affordable Clean Energy. We are big on our acronyms, so that one's called PACE. And this will be available to almost anyone. You can be a municipality, a nonprofit, a for-profit, an institute of higher education, a utility. And it's a loan to you to then build a clean energy generation source and resell that clean electricity to a customer. So those, and then it's a 60%, up to 60% loan forgiveness. So you can do it at half of the cost, basically, of what you would otherwise be financing on your own. And what's exciting to me is that this is the biggest investment in our grid in electricity since President Roosevelt in 1936 signed the Rural Electrification Act. Wow, so hopefully this will change the grid in a pretty major way.
And help us to get somewhere really good in 2030 or whenever. But give us a couple of examples of how these new energy investment benefits will help us.
Yeah, examples often are the best, right? Because the federal jargon can be hard. So let's say you are a dairy farmer. I'm sure you have talked about this before on your program, but methane digesters are one technology that you could use and draw down our money.
But so they're expensive.
They're expensive, right? So you could use the manure as the feedstock to generate electricity, and then you could end up with a dry material at the end of it that you could use for bedding for your cows. And you can use our money to do that. Let's say you're a small independently owned grocery store. You could upgrade all of your refrigeration systems and your heating and cooling with our money, right? But then let's imagine that you are a municipal utility like a Hardwick Electric or a Morrisville Light and Power. You could use our new loan program, borrow money from rural development, work with your municipality or with, let's say, an industrial park, a lot of business owners, or a manufactured housing community, like a mobile home park, and you could put in community solar for a group of clients and then have a 50 or 60% loan forgiveness and do it at half the cost.
Wow, so all over the board, really important to get us to the next step.
Yeah.
So I also want to ask you, before we run out of time, you also support disaster and recovery efforts.
Yeah.
And for instance, you know, of course, we had that in May, that just deep freeze that hit vineyards and orchards really poorly. Are you there for them?
That's a good, USDA is absolutely there for them. My agency, because we don't do crop insurance and we don't do loans directly to farmers, my agency is helping to push out the information, but really what I want to do is direct those folks to my sister agency at the Farm Service Agency. Okay. They have staff in every single county, and those staff are working with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture to figure out how much of the county was impacted, and then based on the percentage by county, they can apply for disaster funds. And that would go through Farm Service Agency. So I would highly recommend, I mean, our hearts break. We drive around and you see oak trees, right, that now have brown leaves, and you see what's happening on farms and in orchards. So I would highly recommend the Agency of Agriculture and then Farm Service Agency for those folks.
So either to call either of them up and they'll connect you.
Yep.
Okay, well, and we, it's widely known that some of the major barriers to home ownership for people is just a real issue right now.
Yeah.
It's just not getting better. How does USDA Rural Development help with housing for low-income people? It's really desperate right now.
It is really desperate, and it's across New England. It's a situation that many people are trying to work on, but housing is one of the, believe it or not, one of the biggest parts of our portfolio, right? Because having people in safe and decent and affordable homes enables them to then get to work and small businesses to grow and for rural communities to be more resilient, right, over the long term.
Sure.
So our programs fall in three categories: housing, and then rural business development, and then community facilities and infrastructure. And that housing program, we have a home ownership program that allows folks who are low income or very low income to apply to us for a loan because they can't go to a commercial lender because it's out of reach.
Okay, yeah.
Our housing team really are dedicated to this work. They are true specialists. It's a small but mighty team, but they are working with folks who, mothers who are putting families in a safe home after a bad divorce. They're working with families who have been recovering from unemployment. And these are the stories that help them get up in the morning. They are really inspirational. And what I want to just share about that work is that we all feel like it is an opportunity that everyone should have to be able to have a safe place to call home, and our programs just help get them in.
Help get them there.
Yeah.
So how can viewers find out more about USDA Rural Development and hook into some of these programs?
Well, our phone number is 802-828-6080, and then rd.usda.gov/Vermont, or if you're in New Hampshire, /New Hampshire.
Okay, Sarah Waring. The feds and Vermont are so lucky to have you in this seat.
You.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's lovely to be here. Thanks, Fran.
And thank you for being with us on Across the Fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Stay well.